If you are a Sacramento Kings fan who wants the team to make a big swing move this offseason, then this is the podcast for you. The Kings reportedly have had conversations with the Chicago Bulls involving Zach LaVine and Alex Caruso. I'll tell you why I'm very, very intrigued. Plus, De'Aaron Fox held a basketball camp here in Sacramento. We got the opportunity to speak with him, and he speaks on Mike Brown, Malik Monk, and so much more. It's all right here for you on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. Now, I've been talking a lot this offseason about is now the time for the Kings to strike, right? The Kings have said, their own general manager has said that the window to win is right now, right? This Kings team is in win now mode. Just because they missed the playoffs doesn't change anything about that. The Western Conference is what it is. It's probably not getting worse. It might even get a little bit better. And the Sacramento Kings have to be prepared to compete with that. And we're not just talking about competing by getting back into the playoffs. We're talking about trying to legitimately compete to one day be able to finally bring a championship ring and a championship banner here to Sacramento. Obviously, this roster, as it stands right now, is a long way away from that. But just because you want to make a move doesn't mean you're able to make a move. You can only do what's available to you. And later on in this podcast, I'm going to have a little bit of a discussion about being more open-minded if you're the Sacramento Kings and Kings fans to the moves that are available instead of trying to wait and find that perfect trade that probably, maybe even definitely, does not exist. But all we can do is talk about the rumors, the speculation, things that make sense, moves that the Sacramento Kings could potentially make that are available to them this summer. We've talked about a potential Brandon Ingram move. We've talked about a potential Kyle Kuzma move. Well, now there have been reports that the Sacramento Kings have been in conversations with the Chicago Bulls involving both Zach LaVine and Alex Caruso. Now, let me provide some important context of everything kind of going on in Chicago and the financial situation of everything, because that plays a massive, massive part in these rumors and in these conversations. Zach LaVine has 3 years remaining on his contract. Those 3 years are $43 million next season, basically $46 million the following season. And then finally, his last season, he has a $48.9 million player option that he is 100% going to exercise. There's no way Zach LaVine is going to walk away from $48.9 million. If he did, he would never make close to that again. That's just the reality of where he's at in his career, plus the injury issues, which we'll get into. The Chicago Bulls want to get off of LaVine's salary. They're paying him a lot of money, and they're not really going anywhere. It's not all LaVine's fault. Certainly, he's the highest paid player on that team. They made a big push a couple of seasons ago. It has not worked. Now they're looking to move in a different direction and trying to free up the cap space and get a little more flexibility. The best way to do that, of course, is getting rid of the guy that you're paying over $40 million a year for the next 3 years. But the contract has such a negative value. It doesn't matter how good Zach LaVine is, can still be, and was. The contract has such a negative value that it's been widely reported that the Bulls essentially have to add an asset to it in order to get a team to be willing to take that contract and absorb that contract into their cap space and have that contract be their problem for the next 3 seasons. Zach LaVine, straight up, if money wasn't involved, Zach LaVine is still a very, very talented, especially offensive player that can help any team win. I believe that wholeheartedly. But you attach the money that he's making to the type of player that he is, and unfortunately the financial aspect outshadows or overshadows who he is as a player and who he still can be as a player. As for Alex Caruso, he's on the final year of his deal. That next season worth $9.8 million. After that, he is an unrestricted free agent. So let's talk about why the Kings would want to do this deal. First and foremost, I don't think the Kings do this deal. I don't think the Kings even consider doing this deal if it's just Zach LaVine. Why in the world would you willingly take Zach LaVine and all that money into your cap for nothing other than him as a player? And we'll talk about how good he is, I think, as a player, how much of a benefit he could be for the Sacramento Kings as a player. We'll get into that because we can't ignore that. But again, the money outweighs the player. And Sacramento already is financially in a situation where they can only pay Malik Monk so much money. They're staring an eventual luxury tax bill in the face. This team is going to have to go into the luxury tax to truly, legitimately compete in the Western Conference. Even with the incoming TV deal and the raised cap, I just don't see a way where the Kings can't, if they truly want to be competitive, can't stay under that luxury tax threshold, at least for more than a season or two. Pure speculation on my part, but just where the money is going, the fact that Fox has a payday coming up, Keegan Murray has a payday coming up, they're paying $40 million a year now for Domantas Sabonis, right? They're going to have to be willing to go into that luxury tax to be able to put together a team that truly can not just compete in the West, but hopefully win a championship in the Western Conference one day. LaVine's contract is obviously a concern. Caruso is exactly what the Kings need. We're talking about a picture-perfect addition. And the Kings are not the only team that feels this way, right? It's been reported the Bulls have turned down draft picks, maybe even multiple picks, for Alex Caruso in the past. We know Chicago loves Caruso. He's affordable. He's a great player to have, a great leader, a workaholic on the defensive end. If there is a Mike Brown guy, Alex Caruso seems like he fits that mold perfectly. If you told me this offseason that the Sacramento Kings added Alex Caruso and didn't give me any other circumstances, my initial reaction would probably be, wow, what a great offseason. The circumstances in this case, though, might be if you want to get Alex Caruso, you have to be willing to take on all of Zach LaVine's money. On the flip side, though, the Kings might look at the Bulls and go, if you want to get off of Zach LaVine's money, you have to give us Alex Caruso, because Sacramento is not in a position to be interested in taking Zach LaVine in multiple first-round picks and just eating his money and taking that into their cap space and hamstringing themselves for the next 3 seasons financially just for future draft picks when, again, they are trying to win right now. I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for Sacramento to do that. If the Kings can get both Zach LaVine and Alex Caruso in a potential deal, even with the financial ramifications, they have to be interested. They have to at least have that conversation and discuss, 1, what will it cost the Kings? What does that trade look like? And 2, is this the best swing available to Sacramento if they truly feel like they have to make a move this summer, which many of you and many around the league feel that they do. LaVine's contract is way worse than LaVine is as a player. When LaVine is healthy, he would give the Sacramento Kings what they've been needing. We're talking about another go-to scoring option. Kings have needed that. They leaned heavily on Malik Monk for a lot of that. They're still hoping that Keegan Murray can turn into that. You add Zach LaVine to this roster. He does not have to be the alpha. He does not have to be the number one. You can slot him right into your De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis ran offense, and he can help you get buckets. That's the kind of guy he is. Defensively, question marks, concerns for sure. And that's where I wonder about LaVine's fit in Mike Brown's system going forward? Is LaVine willing, and maybe more importantly, physically, health-wise, able to play the physical brand of defense that the Sacramento Kings want to play? But if taking LaVine gets you Caruso, who does fit that mold, again, maybe it's worth it. Of course, if he stays healthy, is a really, really big if. He only played 25 games last season, mainly because of a foot issue that required surgery. He's only had 4 seasons out of the 10 he's been in the league. He's only had 4 seasons where he's played 66 or more games. Why do I use that 66 number? Because 66 games is 80% of the season. Only 4 seasons in 10 that he's played 80% of the season or more. Again, only 25 games last season. However, the 2 seasons before that, he played 67 games and 77 games. And in those 2 seasons, he averaged 24 points per game, shooting 48% from the field, 38% from three-point range, 85% from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. Now, he was pretty much the main guy in Chicago, but those numbers are fantastic. If he comes to Sacramento, I think he's probably the number 2 scoring option behind De'Aaron Fox. He's definitely not number 1. I say probably because maybe Keegan hopefully develops into someone who's capable of being more of a go-to scorer than Zach LaVine is. But more than likely, right away, if this trade were to happen this summer, starting next season, Zach LaVine is the second go-to scoring option for the Kings, assuming, of course, that he is healthy. Also, he fits pretty much the age timeline of the Kings. He will turn 30 this upcoming season. In March, he turns 30. So he's not old by any means. Again, the injuries are a big if, but the injuries are less of a risk than the financial part of it. You combine the two together, there's a lot of risk there. But again, I ask you, does the risk outweigh the reward of adding another go-to scorer and being able to get Alex Caruso? Here's the money situation with a quick breakdown, right? Let's say they bring LaVine in. Starting next season, between De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and Zach LaVine, the Kings are paying the 3 of those players $118.3 million. The following season, 2025-2026, which is De'Aaron Fox's last season of his current deal that he is on, the Kings will pay $126.5 million to just those 3 players. Again, that does not include an Alex Caruso extension. That does not include a eventual De'Aaron Fox extension or new deal. And that does not include the second contract for Keegan Murray that he will receive. So the Kings, essentially, if they do this, they are going all in with this core financially. They're locking it in. They are in cap hell, but this is the group. This is the swing. You make this move, there's no other big move around the corner unless you're trying to break something up, right? This is the core you're locked into. Financially, this is what you're invested in. And if it does not work, you're stuck with LaVine for probably 3 seasons. I can't imagine the Kings would be able to trade LaVine's contract away in the future. They're stuck with LaVine for 3 seasons. And at that point, they probably have to break it up by looking at trading Fox or trading Sabonis or trading Keegan Murray. I don't even want to speak that into existence, but that's the worst case scenario we're talking about here. But on the flip side, this could work out, especially if Malik Monk leaves. This is probably not a trade that I make on draft night. This is not a trade that I make with the 13th pick, because I don't make this deal. Even with Caruso coming here, I don't make this deal if Malik Monk comes back. I don't. I would choose Malik Monk over Zach LaVine pretty much without hesitation. Now, Zach LaVine is a better overall offensive player than Malik is. He's a better scorer, has been his entire career. But Malik Monk overall stays healthier. I know what happened at the end of last season, but overall he's does not nearly have the injury history that Zach LaVine does. And Malik Monk is a far better, I think, facilitator, distributor, playmaker than Zach LaVine is. And on top of all that, we know Malik fits, and we know financially what the Kings will pay him, $17 million compared to $40 million for someone who might not fit. But if Malik leaves, which is very possible, some would say even probable at this point, if Malik leaves, finding a replacement for Malik Monk is going to be near impossible for Sacramento without taking a risk to the level of Zach LaVine. And if LaVine stays healthy with the Kings offensive system that they're capable of running, you add in Alex Caruso to shore up the defensive end. We're talking about a starting lineup of Fox, of LaVine, of Keegan Murray. The 4 is in question because reportedly the Kings would try and trade both Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes in this deal. So whoever the 4 is, maybe it's Trey Lyles, who knows, and Domantas Sabonis. 4 of your 5 starters are Fox, LaVine, Murray, and Sabonis, with Alex Caruso and Keon Ellis and other players. Trey Lyles potentially coming off your bench. That's a good squad. Is it a championship caliber squad? As of right now, I would probably say no, because they have to prove that they can be. They haven't earned that yet, but they're better, in my opinion. If you want the swing, that's maybe the biggest swing that the Sacramento Kings can make. In the next segment, we're going to talk about what the package would likely look like if the Kings were to make this deal, what package I'm comfortable with, where I draw the line if I'm Sacramento. And then I want to have a discussion about you can't have both. You can't have the you can't have the Kings make a move this offseason or demand the Kings be making a move, but balk or shut down everything available to Sacramento because of the risk involved. I'll get into more details about that. Plus, audio from De'Aaron Fox coming still on the podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So what would a Kings trade for Zach LaVine and Alex Caruso with the Chicago Bulls look like? I mean, we're talking a blockbuster here. If the Kings can get both of those players, it is a blockbuster. No matter how you swing it, I don't see a way that the Kings don't get criticized for it. There are going to be some people, no matter who trades for Zach LaVine, if anybody, people are going to criticize that team because of the contract that they're bringing in. And I understand. Again, is the risk worth it? The risk was worth it for the Sacramento Kings to trade Tyrese Halliburton away to bring in Domantas Sabonis. And it's worked out for Sacramento in so many ways, right? If you're the Kings, you're not concerned about public opinion in making this deal. You are concerned about all the elements we discussed in the last segment about the risk factors with LaVine financially and with his health. And you're also concerned about, are we giving up too much to take that risk, mainly to bring in Alex Caruso, who we really, really want and would really, really like? So the package is important. And some of you I've already interacted with and seen on social media saying, like, even with the risks to Zach LaVine, I'm not making a decision until I know what's on the table. What does this trade look like? So I laid out the trade that I would want to make and I would want the Bulls to accept. I have a trade that I would try to make if the first one did not work. I have a trade that I would consider, and then I have a trade that I would decline, and anything beyond that I would just outright decline. Here's the want trade. I would want Sacramento, a deal for Zach LaVine to look like this: Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, Chris Duarte, and one first-round pick for LaVine and Caruso. I have no idea if the Bulls have any interest in Duarte. Duarte doesn't even have to be involved in the deal, technically. Financially, it works if the Kings just did Barnes, Herter, and one first. But the Kings would be taking on like $18 million worth of salary into their cap by doing that. So if they could get one more player, like an expiring deal like Duarte, into that and lessen that cap hit a little bit to give him a little more breathing room and wiggle room this offseason, that's what I would be trying to do there. I would try to, if the Bulls didn't accept that, I would try and finagle in, instead of Chris Duarte in that package, Davion Mitchell. So you have Barnes, Herter, Mitchell, and one first for LaVine and Caruso. Mitchell, also an expiring deal, but a rookie scale contract, right? Good young player, good young defender, somebody the Bulls might be a lot more interested in than Chris Duarte. I think a better, more valuable player, I think, overall than Chris Duarte. If they say no to that, I would consider, if the Bulls counter and say, give us Barnes and Herter and Duarte and 2 first-rounders for LaVine and Caruso, I would consider. Now they're asking for even more draft compensation. 2 first-round picks plus that package. Now, maybe they even take Duarte off the table. Barnes, Herter, 2 first-round picks for Caruso and LaVine. I think the Kings have to strongly consider that. They don't accept right away and say deal right away, but I think they strongly consider it. And if Malik Monk walks, they really strongly consider it. Where I stop, though, where the line is drawn for me, is if they try and go for Barnes, Herter, Mitchell, and 2 first-rounders. At that point, you're not getting a upside young player on a rookie scale deal in Mitchell and 2 first-rounders from me. And where I just completely hang up the phone is if this deal is even mentioned 3 first-rounders. Hell no. Hell no. And I don't think it would ever even get that far. Right? Hell no. Are you getting 3 first-round picks in this deal at all if you're the Chicago Bulls? Because now we're talking about the Kings not only taking the risk with the financial and being capped out and the risk of Zach LaVine. Now you're talking about mortgaging your future in order to take this swing. Part of the appeal of this trade is you can potentially make this move and make this swing and essentially go all in with this group without mortgaging your future to the extent that you can't really get out of it, and it has ramifications on this organization for years to come if it were to fail. 2 first-round picks you can live with. Probably stings a little bit if it fails, but you can live with. 3, now we're talking about the organization being a really tough spot. And we've seen teams trade 3, 4 first-rounders on these big moves, and more often than not, the team who made the big move and sent all their picks away, they end up pretty hamstrung and they end up regretting the move. I know it's working out kind of right now for the Minnesota Timberwolves with the amount of picks that they sent to the Utah Jazz in the Rudy Gobert deal. But I would not be comfortable at all with the Kings going with more than 2 first-rounders. And again, I'm only doing 2 first-rounders if it's Barnes and Herter and nobody else of real value on this roster right now. That's just where I'm at personally. No Trey, no Mitchell, no Keon Ellis, hell, no even Colby Jones. Nah, I'm not doing that in addition to 2 first-rounders. But I'm telling you, if we found out, if Malik Monk said, let's go, say he goes to Orlando or San Antonio, I'm not trying to speak it into existence again. I want Malik to stay. I would gladly choose Malik staying in Sacramento over the Kings getting LaVine and Caruso. But if Malik decided to leave, and it was in front of me on the table, Barnes, Herter, Duarte, and 2 firsts to get LaVine and get Caruso, I'm strongly considering it. And as I sit here right now talking to you on this podcast, I'm leaning more towards yes. Because I think the Kings have to do something. Now, the Kings might not feel that way, and I've talked about this before, that the Kings might not feel that right now is the time to go all in. They might feel like they can get away with pushing it a little bit further. That doesn't mean they're not going to try and win this year, but they might feel like they don't have to make that big of a swing at this point in time compared to the Phoenixes and the LA Clippers and the LA Lakers and teams that are at the end of their window, or they literally have to win a championship now or it's kaput. It's done. right? The Kings aren't in that position. So maybe they decide to go in a different route, which is like a Kuzma route or something like that. Great. The one thing I know that they can't do, and I will not be happy with, is if they decide to just run it back, especially if they run everything back with minor improvements after losing Malik Monk. Then we're talking about the Kings struggling probably in the West to get back to the play-in, let alone the playoffs, in my opinion. But here's the thing. I know that social media, Kings Twitter, does not represent all of the fan base. So those of you who are not active on social media, who are listening to this podcast, are probably rolling your eyes because I'm not trying to say that these people and the conversations happening on Kings Twitter are representations of your beliefs and your feelings on these conversations. But every single time one of these potential deals becomes available, Brandon Ingram, no, don't like it for this reason. Kyle Kuzma doesn't take the game seriously. Zach LaVine, injured all the time and worth so much money. You're right in all these concerns that you have with these deals. But let me make it perfectly clear to you. There is not a deal that the Sacramento Kings can make that does not involve an element of risk. There is no perfect trade out there. The only safe thing for the Kings to do is to essentially stay put. And I think the entire fan base knows that cannot happen again. You can't have it both ways. There is no big trade that makes a significant impact on the Kings in a very competitive Western Conference that does not involve a gamble, that does not involve a risk, and probably does not involve Vivek getting into his pocketbooks and being willing to pay a luxury tax bill and putting the Kings in a financial tough spot. Monte McNair is all about financial flexibility, and I understand why. He wants to put the Kings in a position to where if they are ready to make a big move, they can make it. Well, here it is. Are you ready to make it? Because you can. Is now the time, or is it not? That's the question that the Kings have to answer, and that's the question that you as a fan have to mull about and think about in your own head. Are you ready for the Kings to go for it and take a potentially significant risk in trying for it? Or are you content with the Kings trying to play it safe and battle for a top 6 seed? We're talking about 4, 5, 6 range. And that potentially likely, at least for next year, being their ceiling. Think about it. Mull it over. Before you hear from De'Aaron Fox, here to wrap up this podcast, like I said at the top of the show, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball. Basketball's over. Bye-bye NBA Finals. I know hockey is still going on. The NHL Stanley Cup Final still battling. The Edmonton Oilers trying to stay alive against the Florida Panthers and have forced a Game 6. But baseball is king right now. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets on FanDuel with any $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use to bet on everything from who you think will win the NBA championship next year, who will be the MVP next year in the NBA, who you think will win the Super Bowl, who you think will be the World Series champion, or, if you want to simplify it, who will hit the first home run in any given game. You can do that all on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to that summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. So I spent the morning and early afternoon in Rockland at Hardwood Palace, which, funny enough, is a gigantic basketball facility where I played as a kid. I got the opportunity to not necessarily attend major Kings basketball camps there when I was a kid, but played there, and so it's cool to kind of come back there and be able to cover an event like De'Aaron Fox's basketball camp. And while we were there, we got to watch Fox do a private workout. He did I shouldn't really call it a private workout. He did a workout run by Kings assistant coach Luke Laux, who's been working with De'Aaron over the past couple of years since Mike Brown came here to Sacramento. He's the guy that's largely responsible for the growth of De'Aaron's jump shot. Got to watch that, and it was really cool. De'Aaron also flew out and invited 3 of the top high school women's basketball players in the country, all Texas-based. De'Aaron's from Houston, so all Texas-based. He flew them down to be a part of the camp or I should say to help with the camp, not necessarily be a kid in the camp, but to help with the camp. And then they got to participate in De'Aaron's workout with Coach Laux, which was really, really cool. And then, of course, we got to speak with De'Aaron at the camp. Got like 15, 20 minutes with the guy. He was in a great mood. He had baby Rain on his lap. And he answered a lot of questions and talked about a lot of different topics. And I wanted to share some of those with you. The first one is De'Aaron talking about Malik Monk's free agency status and the conversations that he has had or hasn't had with Malik this summer.
I've never hit free agency before. This is technically, I guess, his second time kind of hitting free agency, but seeing the player that he was whenever we signed him to the player that I wouldn't even say that he's become much of a different player. He was able to showcase more of what he could do. But just being able to be in this situation and obviously having multiple teams that are trying to come after him, I'm definitely happy for him, and obviously we want him to stay, but at the end of the day, he has to do what's best for him. No, I don't know. I don't really ask him. Funny enough, we saw him Monday? We saw Malik Monday. I'm not sure. We're friends first, and then that side is that side, but I don't really ask him about it. I ask him where he's been on vacation and where's fresh. How's your mom doing? How's your brother? How's your nephew? Like, I'm not really asking him anything about free agency.
Regardless of what happens, you got 2 seasons to play together at the NBA level. Did you quickly fall back into the dorm room times together?
Definitely, man. Malik's Malik. The same way kind of Cal was with him, that's the way that Mike was with him, giving him the freedom. Obviously, Malik has a big personality, but Mike and Cal's approach to coaching Malik was very, very similar. So, and I think that's a big reason why he was successful, I feel like, as well.
Can you go into that a little bit deeper? Because Malik's kind of said the same thing. He feels like Mike and the Kings have enabled him to play the way he's always meant to be played and never got an opportunity to. Seeing that from your perspective, him becoming himself on the court, what was your perspective on that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, like the NBA, obviously a lot of guys are talented, a lot of guys can play. But at the end of the day, it's about roles. What's your role? Can you fill the role that the team needs? And obviously people always talk about, guys not being in the NBA, maybe because they probably couldn't fit a role. Like there's only a certain amount of spots. There are probably guys that are in Europe or wherever they're playing right now. There are better than some guys in the NBA, but they couldn't fill out the role that the team needed them to fill. And I think us giving Malik that bigger role allowed him to showcase more than he could when he was in previous situations. So a lot of people who watched Malik in college knew that he could put the ball in the basket, but didn't know that he could play make. And then he got into the league, he developed that, and then when he was here, he was able to showcase that. So his role got bigger, and I think he was just able to showcase more than he was able to in the previous years.
It's funny, I released that clip on social media, and so many people immediately responding, oh, he's gone. Malik Monk's gone. This is De'Aaron Fox essentially letting us know that Malik Monk's gone. I think it's a bit maybe too pessimistic of a way to look at it. You could be right. Essentially, it's De'Aaron just saying, we want him back. We would love for him to stay a King, but he's going to do what's best for him. De'Aaron recognizes, even though De'Aaron said he's never been in that free agency position before, he recognizes Monk's journey and the opportunity made available to Malik. And De'Aaron is making $30 million plus a year, right? So I think he understands if Malik decides to do what's best for Malik and chase the bag that has kind of been eluding him his entire career because of the struggles that he's faced. So I don't think that quote at all and that bite at all suggests that De'Aaron's read between the lines is saying Malik Monk's gone. But hey, draw the conclusions that you want to draw. We also asked De'Aaron Fox about his thoughts on Mike Brown getting the contract extension. And I really like that De'Aaron took some time to talk about the stability that it brings the organization.
I talked to him. Obviously, I've been with Luke Laux a lot and kind of talked about the situation a little bit, kind of right before and then right after. But we always talk about having that type of stability. Obviously, it's not saying that you want to become stagnant or anything like that, but just knowing that you're going to have kind of a core and then a coach for. And obviously in this league, Monty Williams just got, I guess, fired or dismissed today. So it could always change in the blink of an eye. You never know. But just to kind of feel like you have that stability going forward is definitely great, and you look to build off of that. If you count Alvin, I think this is my fourth coach. So this is my fourth coach, and I kind of came into a situation that was anything but stable. But for us, I feel like we got better, and then obviously we kind of took a step back. We won 2 less games, but you dropped 6 spots, especially with the way that the West is going. But like I said, just having that stability helps in the long run, I feel like.
Fox also talked about how much reflecting he's been doing this offseason about last season. He isn't really thinking too much about or worried too much about next season yet. That doesn't mean he's not putting in the work for next season already, but he's still more thinking about what went wrong last season than what next season is going to look like. But he is and was very transparent about one of the things that needs to change is the Sacramento Kings' poor free throw shooting.
I mean, I haven't thought about next season too much. Obviously, for me, it was kind of still reflecting on what was done this season. And knowing, obviously, we know that we have to get better. I mean, there's no question to it. Obviously, I mean, 46 wins, you're not a bad team by any means getting 46 wins, but at the end of the day, we didn't make the playoffs, and that's no one's goal. So we know that we have to continue to get better, whatever that means. I don't know. If it's pieces, if it's the guys that we have right now that have to just get better, then that is what it is. But some point, some way, somehow we have to be able to get better. I mean, I think at the top, if we make free throws, we probably win 52, 53 games. So do we need to make a big swing? I don't know. Is there small, minor tweaks here and there? Maybe. I don't have those answers, but I do know if we weren't the last team in free throw percentage, then we're looking at this season like it's an entirely different season. So. No, not at all. I mean, we could have been even just a little bit below average, and we have 50 wins, and we're not even in the play-in. So, like I said, I think I've spent more time reflecting on this season than I've thought about going into the next season.
Finally, I asked De'Aaron Fox about how the Kings played defensively to end last season. The final third of the season, the Kings defensively looked like a completely different team. They were playing more of a physical brand defense, and it got me thinking, hey, is this for real? Is this what this Kings team is going to be and can be defensively over the course of an 82-game season? So De'Aaron answers that, and also discusses what changed to allow the Kings to play a more physical style of defense.
I think a lot of that had to do with officiating. But, I mean, if it's officiated that way from beginning to end, then you don't really need a period to adjust, because I think after All-Star break, it took teams like 2 or 3 weeks to kind of get adjusted to what the physicality was like and how it was being officiated. But if it's played like that through the entire season, I mean, you'd rather it be consistent all the way through rather than, make a dramatic change. As much as they want to say it wasn't a change, like it was a pretty drastic change and everybody noticed it. But if it's like that for the entire season, like you're perfectly fine with it, then maybe we can put together an entire season of good to great defense.
Did you enjoy how it was more after the change?
I did, because, I mean, I still played well after All-Star break, so people talk about ethical hoops. Man, my goal is to put the ball in the basket. If I'm at the free throw line, three-point line, layups, floaters, mid-range, whatever it is, I'm trying to put the ball in the basket. So I'm trying not to worry about what the foul calls are like. But I think I played better after All-Star break than I did before All-Star break. So people can take that as they may.
If you want to catch the full interview that we did with De'Aaron Fox, it's available now on abc10.com. Would love to hear your comments on the things that Fox said. Would love to hear your thoughts on this Alex Caruso, Zach LaVine potential blockbuster. Do you do it? Is it worth the risk, or do you stay far away and look for another deal? Let me know. Let's discuss it at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter or X. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com if you'd like, or feel free, if you're watching on YouTube, to get the conversation going in the comment section down below. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.